Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha v'Haverim.
Shabbat Shalom.
This Shabbat, we're going to continue and make the final teaching on the biblical proper observation of Rosh Chodesh, which in English is New Moon. Now let us look into some of the objections to our understanding, to what I presented before for each one of us. Some theologians, often who represent mainstream Messianic Judaism, who assimilated themselves with the rabbinical Judaism with their astronomical calendar, despite of their rabbinical opinion that admits that they are wrong in their dates in their calendar, despite of all of this, some Messianic theologians wants to prove the agreement of the rabbinical calendar with the scriptures. Some such theologians, they point to Psalm 104:19. They point to the Psalm 104:19 to prove that this pasuk, this verse, showing us we supposed to recognize the time of Rosh Chodesh, which is new moon. So let us look to see what this pasuk is saying for us. Quote, "He made the moon for the seasons. The sun knows the place of its setting." End of quote. Now, in regards of a proper translation, we must acknowledge that the word here, which is seasons in English, is actually the Hebrew word moadim, which properly should be translated as appointed times or feasts. So then, this pasuk should say like this: He made the moon for the feast, appointed times. The sun knows the place of its setting. So, what this verse is teaching us? What do you see? In this verse, in this pasuk, we learn the principle that Adonai has set the moon for the appointed times, for the Moadim, for the feasts. And that is very correct. With the reading of the appointing of all of the feasts except the day of Shabbat, which is not set by the moon, but by the seventh day of the week. Shabbat, which is determined by the setting of the sun. We see this in Vayikra, which is Leviticus, chapter 23:32, where the sun is described for regulating the beginning and the end of day, every day. There, in Vayikra, chapter 23:32, we read in regards of the time of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. On the 9th of the month, which is Chodesh in Hebrew, at the evening, from evening until evening, you shall keep your Shabbat. End of quote. So this verse is one of the most clear verses in the Torah, which points when the day begins and when the day is ending. Therefore, in Psalm 104, verse 19, it says, and it speaks in agreement with the setting of the Moadim, that the days of the month, or the moon, are set for the appointing for us when in the particular month we have feast. And the setting of the sun is appointing for us when a particular feast or a day of feast are starting and ending. That is with the sunset. For the word Moadim is in plural, it's not in singular. So that means it points to all of the feasts. That is also in agreement with another pasuk, with another verse, Bereshit, Genesis 1:16, when it says, God made the two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern night, etc., and etc. So again, another place in the scriptures confirm to us that the lesser light, which is the moon, is to govern what? The night, and the greater is to govern the day. Now, some theologians say that in Psalm 104:19 is teaching us as the setting of dawn is for the sunset and starts and begins and ends another day. So in the same principle, we should think about the feast. That means Rosh Chodesh. So in other words, some people say that when you see the last sliver of the moon at the end of its cycle, and the next day is dark, no more moon visible, and that should be the first day of the month. Have you heard opinion like that before? So, because the sun is setting down and it's getting dark, we have the beginning of a day. So some people say, well, this Psalm 104:19, it seems like teaches us the same principle for the new moon. Does it so? Is it in this case that this teaches us in this psalm, does it teaches us that when it's dark, we should recognize this to be a new moon? That's a question that we need to answer. Now, when we know that the darkness of the moon can last between 1.5 to 3.5 days, and if we will apply such a thinking, analogy, then in that case, the new moon would actually be before the conjunction of the astronomical moon, which is according to the rabbinical calendar. So such a calculation will not fit in even to rabbinical understanding. Another place some people point to is Psalm 81 verse 3, where in the New American Standard Version we read, blow the trumpet at the new moon, at the full moon, on our feast day. Do you see that? This they say, it's proving that the new moon should be at the full darkness of moon. That's all the battle is. When is the new moon? Some people say that this verse is proving that should be at the darkness time of the moon. Let us first examine this psalm in a different translation, i.e., I'm going to bring a translation from the Stone edition. The Tanakh, the Jewish Old Covenant writings, the Stone edition is one of the most popular translations, and it says, blow the shofar at the moon's renewal, at the time appointed for our festive day. End of quote. So the question is, this is a Jewish translation. This is not a Christian translation, okay? So this translation says that we should observe the new moon when the moon is covered with darkness. Does it say so?
It says moon's renewal.
Right, but the question is, does it say that the renewal is at the darkness? At the full darkness? No? Okay, let's look to another translation. JPS. JPS, it's a Jewish Publication Society. Another very well recognized translation from Jewish point of view of the Tanakh. Here it says, look what it says here. Blow the horn at the new moon, at the full moon, for our feast day. End of quote. So, does it matches the one that Stone is actually showing us? Now, this is another highly recognized translation from the Jewish point of view. Does this translation teaches us that the new moon should be at the complete darkness, when the moon is completely covered with darkness? Does it? So now when we look to next one, it's Young's literal translation. Look what this one says. It says, blow in the month, in the new month, at the day of our festival. Now this is supposed to be a literal translation. Do you see that? Now this one, it says a little bit different. Now all of these things are showing us that there is some problem with translating this verse. And that's why, because of Talmud, saying, rabbis in Talmud are saying that this is supposed to prove the rabbinical calendar, many people hold to it. Now, at this time, let us look further, but this time to the Hebrew text of this verse, this pasuk. And in Hebrew it says, Tik'u b'kodesh shofar v'keseh leyom hageinu. Those who can read Hebrew scriptures, you may enjoy to read that. Now, there are some rabbis in Talmud who says that the word Hebrew keseh in the word bakeseh means covered. That's what they claim in Talmud. So that is why they say that the new moon is at the time when it's covered. And they believe that it refers to the complete darkness of the moon. Now, this word in such spelling exists only once in the Hebrew text. Only in this place and not any other. And that's why even the Jewish people themselves say it is much harder to prove the original meaning of that word. Now, big authorities in rabbinical Judaism of the old time, such as Rashi, Ibn Ezra, those are big authorities, and Radak, understood the word keseh to mean, I quote, the appointed time. That's what they understand. So they are actually saying that they are against the Talmudic interpretation. So now we see there is a confusion between the Jewish people how to actually translate that one word. Now, they say that connecting the word keseh, spelling here at the end with hey, to the word keseh, spelling with aleph at the end in Proverbs 7:20, they are connecting together. Perhaps this is why the Jewish translations, the most popular and the most strong translations that are honored in Judaism, they hold to the view of Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and Radak, instead of some debates in Talmud. In my research, I have found yet another surprising Jewish translation of Psalm 81:3. That is from the Polish rabbi. His name is Zilkow, who had translated all Psalms into Polish language in 1883, Common Era. And in this Psalm 81:3, he translated as, I quote, blow in the month, in the trumpet, at the full moon, in the day of our festival, end of quote. So now, when we look into the Hebrew text, this translation is the most accurate in regards literal translation of the Hebrew. This Rabbi Zilkow, he says underneath his translation as an explanation, he says like this: B'chodesh means in the month and not in the new moon. Did you notice that? He says to translate the word B'chodesh in Hebrew, it is not supposed to be translated as a new moon, but as a new month. So that would not be in agreement with keseh, fullness, in consideration with Proverbs 7:20. For the author in this case can speak only about one festival, Chodesh then means here only the first month, Nisan, and not the seventh Tishrei, as the Talmud claims. Then it's a closer description of a time, such as at the fullness of the festival, or at offering Chag festival sacrifice. New Year does not have the name Chag, and the shofar does not mean also that could be a silver trumpet or a gold, and not only shofar, at which they had to blow at the new moon. End of quote. So what I'm trying to say now is that this rabbi says this text does not speak about what the other people are translating. It's not about the new moon, but it's about the month, Chodesh. Ba Chodesh in Hebrew, Ba, it's in the Chodesh month. Now the word Ba Chodesh can be translated, the word Chodesh alone can be translated both ways, new moon and month. That's a uniqueness of the Hebrew language. But this rabbi says, in this case, it's not permitted to translate as a new moon, but as a month. So this Rabbi Silkov, like Rashi, and even Ezra and Radak, disagree with the Talmud and goes even further and say that this verse does not speak at all about new moon, but rather about the first month, Nisan or Aviv, and then about the feast of the Chag HaMatzot, the feast of unleavened bread. In the Hebrew Tanakh, the word Chag is in regards of Moadim, appointed times, and refers only to 3 pilgrimage feasts known as Shalosh Regalim. Now, what are the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 appointed feasts that carry the title Chag? Now, you remember we say Chag Sameach? So, this actually greeting Chag Sameach can go only to 3 feasts. And these are Chag HaMatzot, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Chag Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, and Chag Sukkah, a Feast of Tabernacles. These are the 3 pilgrimage feasts where in Hebrew we have the word Chag attached when it comes to the feast days. Now, the context of this psalm confirms that this author speaks about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's read with this pasuk with more context. So we're going to read from 81:3, Psalm 81:3, with a proper translation this time, okay? Blow the trumpet at the month on our feast day, for it is a statute for Israel, an ordinance of the God of Jacob. He established it for a testimony in Joseph when he went throughout the land of Egypt. End of quote. So the question is, what is the testimony that he is referring here that was established in Egypt? Is it Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah or Feast of Trumpets that was established when they were in Egypt? Or it is the Feast of Unleavened Bread? Is it possible it could be Sukkot or Feast of Unleavened Bread? What was the testimony set up in the time when they were leaving Egypt? The context of this psalm points very clearly that the author has in mind one Chag of the 3, and that is the Chag HaMatzot. Why? Because on the first day of the Chag HaMatzot, of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, our people left Egypt on the first day. And that is the testimony, a great testimony, that Adonai had freed our people on the first day of the Chag HaMatzot. So, the word Hageinu in the Hebrew text, it's understood to say our feast. So the whole commotion in this verse is about the Talmud when regards the word kesed. And now we're going to look to a most respectful dictionary for proving what the word actually means. You know, we need to bring all the possible support to prove what is the truth here. Now, in both cases which I'm going to quote for you, they say that this word means full moon. First, confirmation is in the strongest strong concordance, where the word is under the number 3677 and is translated as a full moon and appointed time. So it's not about the darkness of the moon, but at the full moon. Okay? Next one is found in the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew and English lexicon, where under the same name, under the same number, we find the same interpretation as a full moon. You can check yourself these things. So the commotion in Talmud that try to take people's attention to say that it speaks about the new moon has very little support except only in that place in Talmud. Now, that would be almost all in the biblical objections of citing of the Rosh Chodesh, except another one. That is also related to this Psalm 81:3, which says that we should blow the trumpet or a shofar at the time of the full moon at the feast of the Chag Hamatzot, or Feast of Unleavened Bread. We also do this at the Feast of Sukkot. At the first opening day of the Chag Hamatzot, we have to blow the trumpet to announce the feast. But some But what many people noticed when we come to this feast of the full moon, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread or Feast of Tabernacles, it happens that we come to the feast a day after full moon. And many people looked at the calendar and they even come to me and say, did not this feast supposed to be in a full moon? How come we starting the feast when the full moon is over? Well, and other people say, look at the blood moons. You know, in 2014 and 2015, many people are so excited about the 4 blood moons. One is Pesach, Sukkot, and this year again, Pesach and Sukkot. You're familiar about it. So many of you probably watch and search for the meaning and what is this supposed to give us, what kind of a sign, right? And it's very interesting because many people come and say, well, listen, this blood moon, it happens before we start the feast of the full moon, which is Feast of Unleavened Bread or Sukkot. How could it be? It seems like we are wrong. But I want you to notice one more thing. That last Sukkot, the blood moon, and Nancy, you even text me, and I have this on my phone at night, that the moon was coming to be almost red or pinkish, whatever. It actually happened day earlier before the rabbinical feast day. So that again teaches us there is something wrong here. What is wrong? Even the rabbinical calendar was one day further than the blood moon. We were again more than that. So what's the problem? Where is the problem? Some people say that observing a full moon, we should take 3 days in consideration. The same equal amount of time that is the darkness without moon should be counted as the same amount of time for recognizing full moon. But that is not proof of anything, because this is just some speculation. Now, let me go further. As I was looking for a reasonable explanation why we have our feast when the full moon is passing 1 day or even 2 days after the beginning of the full moon, why we have the shift, why we don't have the full moon to blow the shofar in the full moon at the appointed time, I found some interesting information about how this is biblically supposedly proven what's happening here. Let me give you some introduction first to the rabbinical calendar to understand what's going on with that calendar. The rabbinical calendar, again, was established by Hillel II in the 4th century AD. He calculated this calendar based on the conjunction of the moon between the sun and the earth when it's completely dark, and it's a mathematical calculation of that conjunction. But that calendar that he has calculated was not completed. It did not function the way they wanted, and there was many attempts actually to fix that calendar to establish, well, guess what? They didn't have Sanhedrin, and they still wanted to fix that calendar over centuries. And actually it happened in the 12th century Common Era that Maimonides, also a big scholar in Judaism, he completely finished the work of Hillel II and closed the speculation and fixed the errors to establish this calendar to be correct according to their understanding. So Maimonides, who lived in the 12th century, he established 19 years cycle of the Jewish calendar. In that 19-year cycles, he established about every 3 or 2 years, adding 1 extra month to their calendar. So sometimes we have a 2 months of Adar, when is the time for Purim. You're all familiar with that, right? So now, this was established and finally sealed how this calendar can function. Why? Because there is a differences between the solar year and the lunar year. The time of the lunar year is about to 10 and 11 days shorter than the solar year. Now, to deal with this, they had to do some serious calculation, and they established that every about 3 years is to be added another month to balance, to bring to balance the lunar year with the solar year. Are you with me so far? Because I'm going to go now to some mathematics. Yes?
Could you repeat just the last line? The lunar year is about 11 days shorter.
10 to 11 days shorter than the solar year.
So then what happened? What?
That's why they created a cycle of 19 days. And in this 19 years, cycle of 19 years, and in 19 years, every 3, sometimes 2 years, they would add second month, extra month of Adar, to balance, to recompensate the loss between the solar and the lunar year cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Now, some people have found a clue what is going on between why the solar year is different in timing comparing to the lunar year. Well, what do we mean lunar year? Lunar year is basically we calculate months by the appearance of the new month, right, of the new moon. And we have to make 12 months. When we do the solar calculation, it seems that the lunar is shorter. And some people say that there is actually a hint in the scriptures what had happened that disturbed that. Do you know where is this found? It's found in Malachim Beit Sefer, or 2 Kings chapter 20. Can we go to 2 Kings chapter 20? When we read about the King Hezekiah, and he was healed, and he was asked for what sign he would want Adonai to give to him, that he will be healed. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, so in 2 Kings chapter 20:10 we read, Then Hezekiah answered, It is easy for the shadow to lengthen 10 steps. No, let the shadow go back 10 steps. I'm going to bring to you now another translation, youngest literal translation, which shows you that that word, which is ma'ala, can also be translated as degrees. Degrees on a scale of degrees. So do you see the two translations? The little translation that shows you it could be translated also as a degrees. So therefore the shift that had happened have made some changes between the solar year and between the lunar year. Now, in this story, we read about the shift between the sun and the earth. Do you see that? And there's no mention about moon, that moon should be also shifted. Do you see that? It's just about the sun in regards to the earth, or vice versa. Now, I want you to take to another place. This one we're going to take to the Sefer Yehoshua, or book of Joshua, chapter 10, 13. Are we there? Chapter 10, 13. Look what it says here. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation avenged themselves of their enemies. End of quote. What do we see here? We see Adonai is in his intervention with the war that Yehoshua is leading, right? And now at this point do we see what? The moon and the sun stopping. Did you notice that? In 2 Kings 20, it's only reference to the sun. That there is a changes of the 10 degrees of the shadow from the sun. Nothing about the moon. This one speaks clearly. Moon and sun had stopped. So that they can have extra long day to fight their enemies and bring a victory to our people. Some people calculated that the 10 degrees of the shadow to be shifted, it's a loss of 40 minutes. 10 degrees of the shadow, it takes about 40 minutes. 40 minutes of throwing off the balance between the sun and the moon. Why? Because the moon is rotating around the earth. So if there is a shift between the sun and the earth, the moon is still continuous in its orbit. Now, never we see that Adonai would say, well, let's fix this problem with this 10 degrees of shifting. So some people calculated, what is this 40 minutes? How does it affect the moon and the timing? And guess what they came to? 40 minutes a day, they calculated a loss or differences in one. So times 30 days, that brings to 1,200 minutes a month. Again, 40 minutes a day times 30 days, it comes to 1,200 minutes differences for 1 month. Now, 1,200 minutes a month times 12 months brings to 14,400 minutes differences in 1 year. Now watch this. 14,400 minutes in a year times 3 years gave us 43,200 minutes differences for 3 years shift. Now, 43,200 minutes divided by 60 minutes gives us 720 hours difference, all in total in 3 years. Now 720 hours divided by 24 hours give us exactly 30 days. Give us exactly 30 days. So here, from this calculation, the experts are proving that that's why in every 3 years, 1 month must be added. Because of the growing differences over 3 years. After 3 years, the difference will be 1 full month. That's why this 1 month must be added every 3 years to catch up from between the solar cycle to the lunar cycle of the year to make a balance. Now Psalm 81 of which we were speaking, was written by Asaph, and it was dated to be written in the time of King David. That means the Psalm 81 was written before the time of Hezekiah, before the shift had happened. So that's why in this Psalm 81, Asaph says to blow the trumpet at the full moon at the feast in regards to the first day of unleavened bread. And in his time was always on time. So now for all of us, let us remember that Adonai wants us to count our days, our feast days, from the visible crescent of the moon. We see this to be confirmed in the scriptures where it says, I'm going to bring you a quote now from the Stone edition of the Tanakh, from Bereshit 1:14, Genesis 1:14. Look what the Stone edition says. God said, "Let there be luminaries in the firmament of heaven to separate between the day and the night, and they shall serve as a signs, and for festivals, and for days and years." End of quote. Such a position of recognizing the new moon by sighting of the new moon, it's a position of rabbinical Judaism as a correct one. Now they are in the bondage of the calendar established by Hillel II in 4th century AD, and for that reason they cannot change, even having their own Sanhedrin, which is still not in full power. They cannot change. They're in bondage to that calendar. They acknowledge they're wrong, but they're in bondage. Also, the Karaite Jews, who rejects the rabbinical authority, they also, like us, practice the sighting of the new moon. And many other Messianic Jewish communities which did not syncretize themselves with the rabbinical calendar, they practice the same what we do. So we're not alone. Now at the end, I'd like to bring attention to the words of Yeshua HaMashiach that he says to his disciples in Matityahu chapter 5:13. Matityahu chapter 5:13. This is what I'd like to conclude with. He says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and puts it under the basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." Shalom, shalom. Shabbat shalom.